I'm Bob Warfield with CNC Cookbook. Today I'm here to talk about solid carbide end mill grades. As you all know, there's a wide variance in tooling prices. You can buy really cheap end mills, really expensive end mills, and there are grades everywhere in between. When I surveyed CNC Cookbook readers about which end mills they use, there were way over 100 brands represented. This video is all about understanding what's different about an expensive end mill versus a cheap end mill. We'll also try to answer the question of whether the premium end mills are worth their premium price. Let's start by taking a look at what you're paying for with a premium end mill. At a high level, you're paying for one or more of these four things in order to make that end mill perform better. The carbide material the end mill is made of comes in various grades. The geometry of the end mill can also greatly affect the price. Better performing geometries often require a lot more time on the tool and cutter grinder to produce that exact geometry. Coatings are a factor. Coatings can greatly enhance the performance of an end mill, but they cost money to apply. Lastly, precision and quality. This adds to the cost of an end mill. There's no point in a high-performance end mill that never does the same thing twice and that varies too much in their dimensions. So let's take a look at each one of these areas a little more deeply. Solid carbide grades. The notion of solid carbide turns out to be a complete misnomer. When you look at an end mill, you'd swear it's made up of a single mystery metal. But in fact, it consists of particles of tungsten carbide held together by a filler that's soft, doesn't cut very well, and in general doesn't do much except hold the real carbide particles well enough that they can do the real job. So what's the difference between carbide grades? Well, it boils down to the size of carbide particles and how densely they're packed in the matrix of filler and carbide. Fewer relatively large grains make up lower quality carbide. It costs less. Densely packing very small grains, often referred to as micrograin, make up the higher quality carbide grades. It's more expensive to produce these very fine grains, and you use more of them in the more expensive carbide relative to larger grain, cheaper carbides. But they sure do cut a lot better because you've got more actual carbide in the cut and less filler. How about tool geometry? Tool geometry is a huge factor in end mill cost. The more complex the geometry, the longer it takes to convert an end mill blank into a tool. Multi-axis CNC tool grinders are used to cut the geometry into the carbide. The more operations the tool grinder must make, and the more expensive the end mill. I've listed a bunch of common geometry features you might get in an end mill. Some are aimed at breaking up chatter, such as variable flutes and variable rakes. They do that by creating variations in the vibrations from the cutting so the resonant chatter frequency isn't as strong. Other geometry features improve tool life or make it possible to machine slightly different geometries. Bullnose end mills have a small corner radius that generally makes them last longer and they're less susceptible to chipping. A more complex geometry can unlock more performance, but it will also add to the cost. Let's talk coatings. Coatings, like geometry, come in many flavors. A good coating can totally transform the performance of a cutter. Coatings can contribute some or all of the following benefits. Wear resistance. Coatings can make the surface of the end mill harder and more wear resistant. Surface lubricity. Making the cutter surface slicker helps it to slice off chips better and in general to slide through the material better without generating as much heat or without scratching up the material. Less friction is a good thing. Heat resistance. Some coatings, for example TiAlN, can radically enhance the heat resistance of an end mill. That means we can run at higher surface speeds, higher RPMs, and remove a lot more material in any given time. Anti-seizure is an important coating benefit. Some materials like aluminum want to weld chips to the cutting edge and create a built-up edge, or BUE. When that happens, the edge dulls and the cutter soon breaks. The right coatings can fight this tendency. So coatings can radically increase end mill performance. There's a science to choosing what coating to use for best effect depending upon the material being worked, so be sure to check into it carefully when you're ready to choose what coating to put on your end mills. Last one of the four, precision and quality. It's all about making an end mill consistent and predictable. If the dimensions of an end mill vary too much from one to the next, you'll have to waste time measuring each and putting in wear offsets and so on to deal with your job's tolerances. But if the end mill's dimensions are made super accurate and consistent, you may be able to save that time. Likewise, if you're running a premium end mill out near the edge of the performance envelope, you want consistent performance. If a particular feed and speed breaks the end mill 20% of the time, you probably can't use that feed and speed. Consistency can be more valuable than having all-out speed, and quality control is necessary for consistency. End mill manufacturers tackle precision and quality by investing in sophisticated tool inspection devices and many other areas that can add cost. Let's look at the real cost behind end mills and how we should think about it. As you can see, the cost of tooling is relatively cheap. Typically, it's only about 3% of the job. The lion's share are factors that are time related. So for example, if I double the price of my tooling, if I spend 6% of the job on tooling instead of 3%, but that saves me half the time because I can go twice as fast, that is a wildly profitable decision to make, because I'm taking a 70-odd% cost and dropping it down to maybe 35 or 40% by doubling that speed. So most shops that are doing production work should be thinking about premium end mills. I hope you can see that premium end mills make sense for a lot of reasons and why they cost more. I'm Bob Warfield. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back soon with another CNC Chef video.